been a leader in emergency management for many, many years. I believe that in the last several years, our system has been truly put to the test. Virginia has had, in the last several years, many different natural disasters, some very atypical, such as the tornadoes in Southwest Virginia, the derecho, the East Coast earthquake that originated in Mineral, Virginia, and our emergency management system has truly been put to the test and has fared very, very well.
I think Virginia was one of the first ones to come within the emergency management area. Virginia is probably among the top. I'd say it's within the top 3, if not the top, for emergency management. We have Michael Cline as our state coordinator. Michael has been in it from the first. He was here 30 years ago when we were having floods in the mountains area, flash floods. He was here when we had the first hurricanes, and Mike has been one of the ones that's been directing and kept Virginia on the top.
Virginia is pretty disaster prone. We're probably in the top 5 or certainly the top 10, but probably in the top 5 as far as numbers of presidential disaster declarations. So that there was something happening every few years, and sometimes it'd come 2 or 3 or 4 in a year, that would drive additional changes. We were pretty much regularly within every few years, maybe every administration certainly, as the new governors came in, making modifications to the disaster law and to our organization and our ability to respond and prepare.
When I first started in emergency management, the notification system for the city of Norfolk was a siren system, which was installed after the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it was basically an air raid siren, and that was a notification alert that went out, and when the sirens went off, it meant for people to turn in to their local television or radio stations to find out exactly what the pending emergency was. So that was sort of the beginning of mass notification.
Prior to '69, this agency was the Office of Civil Defense. There were 2 iterations, one right at the end of World War II. With the end of the war, then that agency actually stopped, it went out of existence briefly. Then I believe with the Korean War, and certainly then with the Cold War in the 50s, it was brought back as the Office of Civil Defense, and continued forward that way with the 5 regions I mentioned, and about 13 or 14 headquarters staff. So a very small agency that primarily handled civil defense, preparedness for a nuclear attack on the mainland. In 1969, Hurricane Camille ripped through the mountains of Virginia. There was river flooding statewide, but some extreme flash flooding, especially in Nelson County. Most folks are aware of the story. We lost 150 some people to that storm. In some cases, entire families went home, were swept off the mountainside. Essentially, the agency just wasn't prepared, the state wasn't prepared to deal with something like that. As a result of Camille, within a few years, the size of the agency had more than doubled. In 1972, it was renamed the Office of Emergency Services instead of Civil Defense. And Virginia was one of the very first states that really took on that new role of being prepared to deal with natural disasters in addition to the nuclear attack.
You know, emergency management is really a profession. And back in the early days, it was not considered a profession. It was considered just something that somebody had to know a little bit about to make things work. Now it's treated as a profession, as it should be, and a lot of the reason that localities get reimbursed for what they do and have the ability to recover from disasters is through the professional assistance of their local emergency managers. So it's not just response, but it's also preparedness, training, and recovery.
The primary mission of the agency is certainly an element of response and recovery and planning and mitigation, all of those things. But I think the real key is to build that climate of cooperation and coordination between all the different players, because even though we've grown, we're still a very tiny agency. And when you consider the numbers of programs that we have to deal with and throw the disasters in on top of that, there's just, all we can do is coordinate the activity. The VERT is a key element these days, the Virginia Emergency Response Team, which are people pulled in from 20 different agencies and the private sector and the volunteer community. We have to be able to establish partnerships. I think that's the big thing is you have to be able to take care of that coordination aspect of emergency management to make it work.
After 9/11, our governments, Virginia, DC, Maryland, the governor's office all had an Office of Homeland Security. We called it Commonwealth Preparedness. Each of the agencies then had membership into what we call the National Capital Region. It was a brain trust. And we started developing, through the USC grants, planning and strategies. After that, what I started hearing and became more prevalent for education was Homeland Security bachelor's degrees.
With 9/11 and with Katrina and Hugo and Andrew and Sandy, all those, it's brought the importance of full-time emergency management for all hazards.
I'm reminded of the fact that we come in from all walks of life, in all shapes and sizes, and we do it for varying reasons. There's the volunteer side, there's the career side, and Virginia has managed to merge all of that together into a really, really fine system. So it's important as we recognize the 40th anniversary. We also recognize all the leaders across the state, local, state, and federal leaders that we have good relationships with, that we work with on a regular basis, and that when disaster strikes, we know we can count on to make sure our citizens are safe, to make sure that property is secure, and to make sure that we are giving the best possible service to the citizens of the Commonwealth, and that we return everyone back to as close to normal as we can after the disaster has struck.